Greetings, Magic Community. I'm Mike from MTG Scribe, and even though the winds are always changing and the clouds are rearranging, part of me will always be in love with the news. So even though I'm still on a little bit of a hiatus, and I should be back in full force next week with MTG Scribe articles and regular weekly news videos after my son has gone back to school, then there was news this week that was so big that I had to make a video about it, had to write an article about it, couldn't pass this up. So if you haven't heard yet, this week Wizards announced the Magic Spotlight series, which is in a lot of ways a return to the Grand Prix system that we used to have. A little bit smaller and a few other things that aren't quite the same, but uh, in essence, it is the same as the Prix series. And this is fantastic news. I consider this a huge win. So, if you don't know what the Grand Prix series is or what the Magic Spotlight series, what I'm going to refer to as the MSS for the remainder of this video, it is a series of 8 tournaments taking place all around the world, or at least in the United States, Europe, and Japan. There's going to be 5 in the US, 2 in Europe, and 1 in Japan. The first one is going to take place in January in Atlanta. The second will take place in March in the Netherlands. And we'll go over a little bit about the structure of these tournaments and what these are specifically and why this is an exciting announcement. But yeah, let's get into it now. So, just for a little bit of context, I have listened to the full broadcast from Weekly MTG, which is where William Huey Jensen and Blake announced the MSS. I have read every article that I can find officially published about it, and I have listened to the interview that LSV did with William Jensen as well. So I've covered as much as I possibly can about this. And there are a number of interesting news pieces to be aware of. So, uh, to start with, as I mentioned, there's going to be 8 MSS tournaments in 2025, 5 of them in the US, 2 in Europe, 1 in Japan. These will all be open tournaments, so there's not going to be any qualifications for them. Anyone can just pay the fee to enter the tournament and join. Now, I can't speak for Europe or Japan. The European tournaments are going to be managed by Fanfinity, and the one in Japan is going to be managed by Big Magic. The ones in the US are going to be managed by Star City Games. And as far as I'm aware, Star City Games prides themselves on having no entry fee for the events themselves, the SCG cons. And it does seem like these will be held at SCG cons. The tournament itself will obviously have an entry fee, but there will be other events going on, drafts, sealed events, possibly other tournaments. So while they aren't going to be as large as a Magic Con, they are going to have some of that same level of side events and many things to do for these. The events will have a purse of $50,000, and anyone who enters will get a promo, and anyone who ends up in the top 128 will leave with a foil promo. Now, the prize structure is going to be up to the companies managing these tournaments, but both Fanfinity for the European one in March in the Netherlands and the SCG one for Atlanta have released their prize structure. So it's both break down to the same thing. First place is going to get $10,000 cash. Second place is going to get $5,000. Top 4 is going to get $2,500. Top 8 is going to get $1,000. Top 16 is going to get $750. Top 32 are going to get $550. And the top 64 are going to get $350. Now, it is hard to say how many people are going to enter these tournaments and if that structure is going to change depending on the size of the field. Uh, uh, Billy Jensen mentioned on the LSV interview that he could foresee around 2,000 players entering. There aren't going to be artificial caps to these events, although it is possible that the host, in this case Star City Games, and the venue that they're running the tournament at may impose a cap at a certain point. So currently there is no cap at these tournaments, but that may change as we get closer and more people sign up for these. I wouldn't be shocked if 2,000 people signed up. These are likely going to be pretty popular events, especially because, in addition to the cash prizes, anyone who finishes in the top 8 will receive an invite to the a pro tour. For the US for the Atlanta one, that's going to be the first pro tour of 2025, the location of which and the format of which have not been announced yet, although I think it is pretty likely it's going to be a Pioneer tournament. I believe the way that we went this year was Pioneer, Standard, Modern, then Standard for Worlds. So my expectation is that the first PT is going to be a Pioneer tournament. The format for the one in the MSS in January is going to be Standard, and it's going to be sort of a celebration of Standard and focused around the foundation set that is coming out later this year. The one that is going to be in the Netherlands is going to be a modern tournament. Now, in addition to the cash prizes, in addition to the Pro Tour invites, the winner of these tournaments are all going to have some sort of special prize. Um, William Jensen mentioned that this could be a trophy, a special trophy, a product, or something else. It's going to likely be different from event to event based around the theme for that specific tournament, that specific MSS. The one in Atlanta has been announced, and the winner of that event is going to get a case of play booster boxes for every standard set this year. So 6 display play booster boxes for every standard release set this year, of which there are 4. So 24 boxes of standard product. That's pretty good. Uh, I'm interested to see what they do for the modern one. It would be difficult to do something similar with the box thing, so it'll be interesting to see what they come up with for the Netherlands. Now, the actual tournament structure for these events should be the same. It's going to be 9 rounds on day one with a record of 6-3 or better, or 18 points, advancing you to day two. And then they're going to run 6 rounds on day two, followed by a cut to the top 8. And the top 8 will be played to completion on day two. Um, Also of note, it was mentioned on the interview with LSV that these would be at least the first two would be single format events. The exact quote was single format. Well, that's at least the first couple, which we're ready to talk about today. So it does leave the door open that there could be multi format tournaments, MSS tournaments in the future. And I think that opens the door for a potential limited, sealed into draft MSS, which would be very exciting for me. That's the kind of event that I would love to enter. So for now, they're all the first two at least are going to be single format, and as I said, standard in the U.S., modern in the Netherlands. All 8 of these events are going to have official coverage managed by the host of the event on Twitter. Twitter? Why would I say it like that? On Twitter, Patrick Sullivan tweeted out that shortly after this, he got an email from SCG. So fingers crossed. We know we're going to get Patrick and Cedric in the booth for the DC regional championship that's coming up in a few months. So hopefully that also means that we're going to get a little more of Patrick and Cedric in the future. Can't wait to hear them back in the booth, and I hope that we get a good amount of that. SCG now taking over the regional championships, it seems like it's a much more likely scenario. So that's really exciting. If you've never heard Patrick and Cedric in the booth, they are a phenomenal team. Highly recommend that you watch um, the Resleevables. One of the best podcast slash video historical shows about Magic the Gathering. Cannot recommend it. Now, even though there will be Pro Tour invites as prizes for these events, they will not pass down, and players who have a similar record to someone who made the top 8 will not get an invite. There's going to be 8. It's a flat 8 invites to the Pro Tour. So um, that's a little bit disappointing, to be totally honest. I would prefer if they passed down. I don't necessarily mind the nobody of the same record getting one, but not passing them down is a little unfortunate. Um, they also mentioned that standard will be heavily supported when it comes to formats this year. My speculation, and this is just based on what was said about the heavily supported thing and how I sort of envision how this is going to go. This is pure speculation. I kind of think there's going to be three of the five U.S. tournaments will be standard, one will be pioneer, and one will be modern. We know one of the European ones will be modern. My guess is the second one is standard, and my guess is the Japanese one is standard. That would put five of the eight as standard formats, and they do really want to push standard in general. I had heard that recently. One of the things that Blake said on a previous weekly Magic, weekly MTG, was that once Foundations comes out, they're going to start funneling arena players to Standard rather than to Alchemy, which I think a lot of people are going to be pretty happy with. So it seems like they're really ramping up their push for a return to Standard, and that's great to hear. I think Standard is the perfect on ramp to competitive Magic. So glad to hear that. Um, Also of note that this is completely separate from the regional qualifier system, even though SCG is hosting both the regional championships in the US and these MSS tournaments. There is no crossover between the two. There's no plans to consider the current regional championship system season when it comes to setting formats for the MSS, and there's currently no plans for any kind of arena integrations for these kind of things. And that is pretty much everything I have for this week. As I said, I would normally still be on hiatus for one more week, but this was big enough that I thought that it warranted a video and an article. And I will link the article that I wrote on MTG Scribe in the description for this video. Real quick, since we're here, the next Arena Championship qualifier play-in event is going to happen on September 7th for the best of one. That's going to be timeless. The best of three is going to happen on the 13th, and then the qualifier weekend itself is going to happen on September 14th. As far as the Arena Open goes, even though we just had one this past previous weekend, there is going to be another one on August 31st. So they did manage to squeeze one in, a second one for this month at the end of the month. So August 31st is going to be a Bloomborough sealed Arena Open. And that is it for this week. I will see you next week. Again, keep an eye out on my MTG Scribe. I'm going to start having articles anytime the news warrants it. Once again, starting on Monday. And I will be back next week with another weekly news update. So until next time, good luck, and I hope tomorrow's a better day for you.